Hi guys, it's Rich from Teach Me Music Academy, and today I'm going to be talking to you about 5 exercises to help you go beast mode on a guitar. So these exercises are designed to help both your left and your right hand technique. We're going to be doing some really basic things, but ramping them up to 11 in order to get your left and your right hand working in perfect harmony and hopefully send you into beast mode. What I'm going to do is I'm going to play each exercise for you before breaking it down into numerous parts. We'll look at what it is I'm doing and how you'll benefit from that, as well as the techniques behind it, and talk to you a little bit about each exercise in depth. So without further ado, here's exercise number 1. So this is a hammer-on exercise. It's designed to work on your left hand more than anything and really improve your finger strength, your dexterity, your fluidity, as well as doing a little bit of help with switching between strings. Let me break it down for you first and explain what it is I'm doing. So what I'm doing is allocating one finger to each fret. I'm using my index finger to hit my first fret, my second finger to hit my second fret, my third finger to hit my third fret, and my fourth finger to hit my fourth fret. In this exercise, I was using my index finger to hit the 5th fret, my third finger to hit the 7th fret, and my little finger to hit the 8th fret, and then repeating that pattern across each string. I'm only hitting the first note with my right hand, I'm only accentuating that first note and using my other 2 fingers to accentuate the next few notes with hammer-ons. I'll play it slower for you and slow it right down so you can see exactly what it is that I'm doing with my left hand. Obviously, the goal is with this exercise to make sure each note sounds as loud as the first note. So we're relying on our left hand and especially our other fingers that aren't the dominant one to really help those notes sound nice and loud and clear. So that's how we're building up our finger strength. We're going to work on building our fingers up and using our strength to get those notes to sound really bright and full. We can spice this exercise up by using different fingers in different patterns by applying the same one finger per fret kind of knowledge. For example, we could change from using our 1st, 3rd and 4th finger to our 1st, 2nd and 4th finger and having this kind of pattern instead. We can even use our 1st, 2nd and 3rd finger and have a nice little chromatic blues style run going across the strings. Whatever the finger positions we're using, the idea is to run up and down the fretboard and only accentuate that first note, as I said. If you wanted to spice things up, you can start doing alternating patterns on different strings, as long as you know what notes you're meant to be hitting so you're not just winging it. The goal here is to work on your finger strength and to start working on your speed. The faster you can get those hammer-ons, the faster you can start alternating between strings, but you have to make sure those switches between the strings are just as clear as the notes you're playing on each one. There can't be any string noise, no kind of pops and bangs from the previous string. It has to be a nice, clean transition. Try it as a nice, simple BPM to start with, about 60 or 80 BPM maybe. And then the more comfortable you become, start ramping that up by 5 or 10 BPM until you're powering through and each finger sounding just as powerful as the last. Let's have a look at exercise number 2. Exercise number 2 is a real right-handed exercise. It's focusing on just our playing style with our right hand that we're going to be picking with. We're going to look at how we maintain a long and complicated rhythm without straining our arms, as well as tiny little movements that can really affect how we play. This is how that exercise goes. So let's have a look at this seemingly easy rhythm that I'm playing. It's 4 alternate pick notes, which means I'm picking on both the upstroke and the downstroke, interjected with a gallop. Now I will be covering this in another video, but if you haven't already, check out my 5 iconic metal guitar riff video to hear a little bit more about the difference between triplets and gallops. Very briefly, a gallop is a quick succession of 16th notes with a 16th note gap at the end, which creates that dug-a-duh sound. So I first play 1 gallop and then another 4 alternate pick notes, and then 2 gallops, 4 alternate pick notes, then 3 gallops, then work my way back with 4 alternate pick notes, 2 gallops, 4 alternate pick notes, and 1 gallop. So it's a 1 gallop, 2 gallop, 3 gallop, 2 gallop, 1 gallop kind of rhythm. What this is teaching us with our right hand is some control. Over a long period of time, our right hand can start cramping when we start doing really tight rhythms like gallops, and it can cause a lot of strain on this part of our arm. The bigger that movement is with our right arm, the more we're going to struggle getting those really tight, fast rhythms. So this is teaching us a lot of control in our wrist and our arm to kind of minimize that movement. As I'm sure you learned in school, speed equals distance over time, meaning the faster we want to do something, the quicker we have to move our hands by minimizing the distance we're moving and reducing the time we're doing it in. So look at your right hand movement. Are you doing big movements no matter what you're playing? Because if so, you're going to struggle with this movement. It teaches you a little bit of control and reining in those movements to get a really slight rhythm with your right hand. You'll notice when I pick, I don't really move from my elbow when I'm doing this exercise. It all tends to be in the wrist, and then even my fingers just move slightly when I'm trying to get those really tight, fast gallop rhythms in. Just like this. My left hand's not really doing much at this point. It's just kind of steadying the neck and not holding a note. I'm using an open note for this exercise. If you want to start trying fretting notes at the same time, or maybe even changing notes for certain parts of the exercise, like during the gallops, alternating between two notes, feel free. But the main emphasis on this exercise is your right hand. Once again with the last exercise, start at a nice steady tempo, and the faster you can get, the more you bump that BPM up, and see how long you can keep going for. Challenge yourself, set yourself a 4-bar limit, an 8-bar limit, a 16-bar minute, and see if you can hit those limits without straining your arm. Please be careful. If you start to feel uncomfortable, have a little rest and come back to this exercise later on. Let's have a look at exercise number 3. So this is a little exercise I like to call 1 step forward, 2 step back. It's going to be working on both our left and our right hand techniques while working on finger strength, picking, string changing, and a whole host of other things. Let's have a little look at what this exercise entails. So what am I doing with this? Well, I'm playing a descending scale, or in this case, a mode, and I'm starting on one note, moving up to the next note, then jumping back 2 notes constantly throughout this scale. Let me just show you what I mean. So we start on this note here, before moving up to our next note, and then jumping back 2 notes to this note. And we continue this 1 step forward, 2 step back exercise across each string, moving across the fretboard that way, just like this. And so on. Now this might seem like a really easy exercise to some, might seem a bit more difficult to others. What we're working on here is our alternate picking as well as our finger movements. The advantage of this exercise, or disadvantage for some of you, is that it works your fingers into some really awkward positions. You can try this with any scale or mode or shape that you feel comfortable with, majors, minors, blues, pentatonic, whatever you prefer. But the more challenging you make it, the better. You're teaching your fingers to work in a way they're not used to and move into unconventional shapes and patterns, as well as rolling your fingers across onto other strings when you have to hit notes that are on the same fret on different strings. So it might be a bit of a challenge figuring out where your fingers are meant to go, but keep at it, you will get there, and that's the purpose of this exercise. The goal is to get every single aspect of this exercise smooth and clear. Your left hand, you need to be able to hear all those notes individually, as well as minimize any kind of string noise you get when you're skipping strings. Your right hand, your picking needs to be in time with your left hand. If one isn't synced with the other, you're going to start hearing dead notes, wrong notes, and all sorts of terrible things. So get both those hands working in, excuse the pun, perfect harmony. As always, start at a nice steady BPM, and the more comfortable you get, start spicing it up and speeding up. 5 BPM, 10 BPM differences, and keep practicing. Constant loops of working back and forth across those scales, and alternate it with different scales as well. Spice it up and try different shapes and different sounds. Let's move on to exercise number 4. So this exercise is what I call a shred pattern. Shredding, for those of you who aren't a metal guitarist, means super fast soloing, ascending and descending up and down scale shapes. Let me run through this exercise for you and show you what I'm doing in this exercise. What I'm doing is playing a basic minor scale and moving up in 6-note patterns. So I'm going to break it down into each of those 6-note patterns. I start on my first note, A, and I move 4 notes up. Then I come back down those 4 notes to the note I started on, and then run to the end of the 6-note pattern. So that instantly starts putting to work my use of my left hand and getting my fingers coordinated, skipping strings, as well as my right hand, alternate picking and skipping strings again. Then when I move to the second position, I start on the note before I ended on. So the end of the previous 6-note pattern, I ended here. And I start the next 6-note pattern here. And I apply the exact same logic, moving 4 notes up, come back down to the note I started on, then moving 6 notes up the scale. Then I start the note before I finished, in the next 6-note pattern, move 4 notes up, 4 notes back, 6 notes of the minor scale, etc., etc., until I get to the very final note, 4 or 5 octaves from where I started, down here. It's a really long scale that not only gets me more comfortable with the notes on my fretboard, as well as gets me moving around the fretboard a lot more than standard minor scale positions would, but it's meant to be played fast. So this is a real speed exercise, as well as keeping your fingers moving and constantly changing, much like in the 1-step forward, 2-step back exercise. We're constantly changing our finger shapes every 6 notes, which keeps us on edge, and we're changing the intervals between those notes as well. There's some big stretches during this run, but keep at it. It's all part of learning and practicing. As always, start slow and keep building it up. If you're struggling to hit those fast-paced rhythms, break it down into slower rhythms. Instead of playing in sextuplets, which means 6 notes, playing triplets. And then when you feel comfortable hitting triplets at a certain speed, start bumping it up to fit more and more notes in the space that you would normally fit 3. It's going to be a hard one and it's going to be a long one, but if you can blitz this from the first note to the last note at a high tempo, you're going to sound like the best shredding soloist that's ever graced this earth. Keep at it, start slow, build fast. It is better to start slow and cram in all those notes and get them right than to learn to get as fast as you can and then cram the notes in instead. Let's have a look at the final exercise, exercise number 5. So exercise number 5 might come across as the most simple exercise on this list, but I assure you it's not. And for a lot of beginner guitarists, they're going to understand how difficult this is and flashbacks in PTSD style to when they first had to learn hammer-ons and pull-offs. Let me show you this exercise. I could go on, but I think you get the idea. It's a really left-hand heavy exercise, and it's just a simple movement over and over again. We're really working on our durability and our endurance with this exercise. What am I doing? Well, I pick a finger and I pick a fret and start there. So in this case, I'm playing 3rd fret on my G string and using my ring finger on my left hand to hit a note 2 notes above it. And all I'm doing is relying on a constant hammer-on, pull-off technique. Hammer-on being my finger hammering onto that note, pull-off being I'm pulling off that note. All I'm doing is emphasizing that first note and then keeping the note going with that constant hammer-on and pull-off movement. Now, like I said, it sounds easy, but those of you who've mastered hammer-ons and pull-off will remember how difficult it was for you at the beginning. The key to this is learning to apply the right amount of pressure when you hammer on that note in the first place, and then wrenching your finger away from the note when you pull off, which also almost gives it that kind of plucked feel. I'll slow it down and show you what I mean. So that first note that I hammer on with hits that note square on the fret with a lot of force that gets the note to ring as loudly as the note that I picked before it, just like this. And when I pull off from that note back to the note I started on, I wrench my finger away at an angle and almost bend the note before releasing it. That tiny, tiny movement makes a big difference. Whereas if I just took my finger back off the note, I'd lose the emphasis, I'd lose that power, I'd lose that aggression, and I wouldn't have as much ability to bring that note back when I hammer back on again, because I would have already lost some of the volume and the dynamics of this note. So I'll break down that pull-off exercise there and show you just what I'm doing with my left hand. And then wrench away sharply, letting the note ring out as if I've just picked it with my right hand. The goal is to keep that constant hammer on, pull off motion going for as long as physically possible. Like I said, sounds easy, but it's difficult. And the longer it goes on, the harder you're going to find it to keep that note going. So set yourself a challenge. It's not about how fast you do it this time, but how long you can go for. So time yourself. Work in 10-second intervals. Can you make it from 10 seconds to 20 seconds? From 20 seconds to 30 seconds without losing volume? That's the key here. That's about it for all these exercises. If you can master these in your own time and at your own speed and then start cranking up, guaranteed you'll go from being a boss guitar player to a beast guitar player. Thanks very much for tuning in. If you've enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, follow and share this video to stay up to date with all the content we've got coming your way. I'll see you on the next video.